Today's story is disturbing, emotional, and frankly, haunting. It's about a young woman whose life was taken far too soon, in a way that was not only brutal, but chillingly cold. This is the case of Anastasia Grishman. Anastasia Grishman was a 26-year-old Russian woman from the city of Novosibirsk, deep in Siberia. She later moved to St. Petersburg, a city known for its culture, art, but also known for its dark undercurrents, something that sadly became part of her story. From a young age, Anastasia was drawn to self-expression. She had a very bold and alternative look, heavily tattooed, always styled with striking colours and makeup. She wasn't afraid to stand out. In fact, that became her identity. Online, Anastasia started building a following. She made a name for herself as a content creator, sharing her life, her thoughts, and eventually more adult-themed content as well. Her presence on platforms like TikTok, where she went by the name of Grishman, grew steadily. She was part of a growing generation of young women who took control of their image and income by creating content directly to their audience. Now, say what you want about this kind of work, but it's important to remember that she wasn't just an OF model, she was a real person, with real friends, real fans, a real life outside of the camera. What we do know is this: Anastasia had dreams. She was carving out a space for herself, making her own choices, and living with a level of independence that not everyone around her seemed comfortable with, especially not the man she lived with, Dmitry. In late July 2022, something inside Dmitry snapped. Anastasia was in her apartment in St. Petersburg, just a regular day, nothing particularly unusual. She was lying down, probably relaxing or getting ready for a shoot, and then that's when he did it. He attacked her from behind, stabbing her again and again, a total of 22 times, her neck, her chest, her back, her arms. It wasn't a single act of rage, it was a relentless, frenzied attack. Then cold, methodically, he dragged her into the bathtub and left her there. Her body lay in that tub for days, rotting and alone. And what Dmitry did next truly turns it from a crime of passion into something far darker. For nearly a week, Dmitry kept up a charade. He used Anastasia's phone and social media to pretend she was still alive. He messaged her friends, responding as if nothing had happened. In one message, he claimed she was feeling unwell. In another, he said she was taking time off. He even continued operating on her social channels, keeping up the illusion that everything was business as usual. Imagine that. Your friend, your sister, someone you follow and care about, has been dead for days, and the man who murdered her is playing her online, replying to your messages with her emojis, her voice, her tone. It's horrifying, it's deeply manipulative, and it was all just to buy himself time. Eventually, on August the 10th, 2022, people started getting suspicious. Anastasia wasn't posting like she used to, and she wasn't replying in quite the same way. So, a small group of friends decided to check on her in person. When they got to her flat, they noticed the smell immediately. You can imagine it, a hot summer in a Russian apartment, a week-old body. They called the police. And then that's when the truth came out. Dmitry Kalmosky didn't exactly go on the run. In fact, when the police questioned him, he gave a truly bizarre excuse. He claimed that Anastasia had asked him to kill her, that she was mentally unwell and wanted it. A sort of twisted mercy killing, he said. But the evidence told a different story. She was attacked from behind while lying down. There was no sign of a struggle, no note, no agreement. Just 22 stab wounds and a corpse that left her rot while he posed as her online. Eventually, even Dmitry had to tell the truth. He changed his story, saying they'd had an argument and that he had lost control. One moment he was playing the heartbroken boyfriend, the next the innocent victim of circumstance. But all of it, every version of this story, had one thing in common. He refused to take real responsibility. In January 2024, the case finally went to court in St. Petersburg. Prosecutors laid it out clearly. This was not an accident. It was not an assisted suicide. It was a moment of madness. It was jealousy-fueled violence, plain and simple. The court described a pattern of domestic conflict, a relationship where tensions had been brewing for months. Dmitry reportedly hated the attention Anastasia got, hated that other people admired her, that she didn't need him to succeed. Neighbours had heard them arguing before. Friends said she had been thinking about ending things. And so he decided that if he couldn't control her, then no one would. The court found Dmitry guilty of murder under Article 105 of the Russian Criminal Code. And then came the part that left many people stunned. Dmitry was sentenced to just 8 years in prison. 8 years for taking a woman's life, for stabbing her 22 times. 8 years for pretending to be her online, while his girlfriend's body rotted in the bathroom. To most of us, that doesn't feel like justice. It feels like an insult. In Russia, the justice system often works differently. Many sentences are lighter than what we'd see in the UK or elsewhere in Europe. But even by Russian standards, 8 years for this. It raised eyebrows. And if he behaves himself inside, he could be out even sooner. He'll serve his time in a harsh Siberian prison, where winters drop to -30 and the facilities are notorious for the brutality. Some call it a form of justice. Others say it still doesn't balance the scales, because Anastasia doesn't get a second chance. She doesn't get to rebuild her life or walk away. Now, I think this case is really important. Why, you might be thinking? There are, sadly, countless cases of domestic violence all around the world. Why should this one stand out? Well, I think it's because Anastasia had been largely forgotten, reduced to headlines like OF model killed or adult star murdered. But she was so much more than that. She was a daughter, a friend, a young woman who dared to live on her own terms in a world that consistently told her not to. And what happened to her was not just a murder, it's a reflection of society that often turns a blind eye to abuse, especially when the victim doesn't fit a certain mould. We owe it to women like Anastasia to say their names, to tell their stories properly, not as clickbait, not as headlines, but as human beings, whose lives were stolen too soon. Anyway, that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed the story, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.